Everyone thought they knew President Trump, until one question caught him off guard, and the reporter realized she had misjudged him completely. All eyes were fixed on the center chair where President Donald Trump was about to sit. Whether people admired him or criticized him, one thing was certain: when President Trump spoke, the world listened. In the third row sat Emma Carter, a young political reporter from a fast-rising digital news outlet. She had built her reputation on being fearless, the kind of journalist who asked the questions others avoided. Sharp, confident, and quick with words, Emma prided herself on never backing down, and tonight, she was ready for her toughest subject yet, President Trump himself. As the audience murmured with anticipation, Emma glanced at the list of questions in her notebook. Each one was designed to challenge him, to push him, to uncover what she believed was the real truth behind the headlines. She wasn't there to be polite. She was there to hold power accountable. Or at least that's what she told herself. Deep down, though, she had already made up her mind. To her, President Trump was exactly what she thought he was: loud, divisive, and impossible to predict. She believed she knew how the interview would go. He'd dodge, deflect, and dominate the room just like he always did. But something about that night felt different. Maybe it was the energy in the air. Maybe the quiet confidence in his stride as he walked onto the stage. Waving casually to the audience, the applause erupted. The lights intensified, and for a moment, Emma felt an unexpected chill. She adjusted her notes, steadied her breathing, and prepared to ask the question she believed would expose him. The question that would finally make headlines for all the right reasons. What Emma didn't know was that before the night was over, President Trump's answer would change everything, not just her story, but her understanding of truth, power, and the very purpose of journalism itself. Emma had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Her desk back at the newsroom was buried under stacks of notes, transcripts, and printed articles about President Trump. His speeches, his rallies, his interviews, even his old tweets. She wanted to understand every word, every gesture, every strategy. But deep down, her mission wasn't to understand him. It was to challenge him. For Emma, this wasn't just an interview. It was a test, a chance to prove that truth still mattered in a world full of noise. She had practiced her questions again and again, rehearsing her tone in front of the mirror until every word felt sharp and unshakable. And now, the moment had come. When her turn arrived, she leaned forward, heart pounding, and spoke into the microphone with calm precision. President Trump, many people say you care more about headlines and popularity than about the truth. What do you say to those who believe you manipulate emotion just to divide Americans? The room froze. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade. Reporters glanced at one another. Cameramen steadied their lenses. Everyone waited for his trademark comeback, the bold, fiery reply that would fill tomorrow's headlines. But President Trump didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat still. His expression shifted, not to anger, not to irritation, but to something quieter. Something almost human. He adjusted his tie slowly, then leaned toward the microphone and spoke in a tone no one expected. "You know, that's a fair question," he said. "But maybe you've already decided who I am before even listening to what I have to say." Emma blinked, caught off guard. No laughter, no attack, no showmanship. Just a calm, deliberate response. President Trump continued, his voice steady but firm. "The truth is, I speak the way I do because people are tired of being ignored. I might not sound like a politician, and because I'm not one. I'm a messenger for people who feel forgotten. Maybe if more reporters listened to why people support me instead of just how I talk, we'd all understand this country a little better." For a few seconds, silence filled the room. Then a quiet murmur spread across the crowd. Even those who came expecting confrontation looked surprised, and for the first time that night, Emma Carter didn't know what to say next. Emma's heart was pounding so fast she could feel it in her fingertips. This wasn't the soundbite she had expected. She had prepared for a fiery exchange, the kind that would light up headlines and go viral within minutes. But instead of a combative outburst, President Trump had answered with something measured, almost reflective. Her earpiece crackled. Her producer's voice came through sharply. "Push him! Don't let him dodge it. Stay on him, Emma. Don't go soft now." She hesitated. The words echoed in her ear like a command she'd heard 100 times before. Challenge, confront, expose. That was how journalism worked. Wasn't it? But something about the tone of the room made her pause. It wasn't the chaotic energy she expected. The crowd was quiet, curious, listening. And President Trump wasn't dodging. He was engaging. Emma took a small breath and decided to follow her own instincts instead of the voice in her ear. She leaned forward and asked, more gently this time, "So, you really believe the media doesn't try to understand your supporters?" President Trump nodded slowly. His expression was calm but serious. "I think the media writes stories they think people should hear," he said, "not the ones they need to hear. It's easier to label someone a villain than to admit the system might be broken." The words hit harder than she expected. Emma glanced down at her notes. Pages filled with statistics, poll numbers, and carefully crafted follow-ups. But suddenly they felt hollow. She realized she had spent weeks building a case instead of building understanding. For the first time, a question crept into her mind, one she wasn't prepared for. Had she become part of the same system she criticized? A system more focused on being right than on being fair? President Trump's voice softened again, breaking through her thoughts. "I know I can be tough," he said. "I know I say things that sound harsh. But when I talk about putting America first, it's not hate, it's hope. It's about pride, not prejudice." The audience broke into applause. Cameras flashed, but Emma didn't move. She didn't clap. She just sat there, staring at her notepad, her mind spinning, her convictions shaking. For the first time in her career, Emma Carter wasn't sure if she was reporting the story or becoming part of it. The interview was over, but the energy in the room lingered like a fading echo. Reporters gathered their equipment, the studio lights dimmed one by one, and the audience slowly began to file out. Yet Emma Carter stayed in her seat, still trying to process what had just happened. She watched as President Trump stepped down from the stage, surrounded by a small crowd of supporters and staff. Instead of rushing toward the exit or diving into another interview, he stopped to greet people, one by one. A group of veterans approached him, wearing faded caps and humble smiles. He shook each of their hands firmly, speaking to them quietly, thanking them for their service. A little boy tugged on his father's sleeve, clutching a campaign hat that was far too big for his head. President Trump noticed, bent down, and signed it with a grin. Even more surprising, a woman wearing a shirt that clearly showed she disagreed with him approached cautiously. Instead of turning away, he greeted her too, took a photo, shared a laugh, and moved on without any tension. Emma watched it all unfold, her journalist's instincts fighting against her emotions. She had seen political figures perform kindness for cameras before, but this moment felt different, unscripted, human. Just then, an older man walked up beside her. His hands were rough, his jacket worn, and his eyes tired but kind. "You know," he said quietly, "I didn't vote for Trump, but I came here because I wanted to see if he'd talk about us. The people struggling to pay bills, keep jobs, feed families." He paused, watching the scene in front of them. And he did. He actually did. Those words sank deep into Emma's chest. She didn't respond. She just nodded slowly. When the hall finally cleared, she packed her recorder and notes, her mind still spinning. Just as she was about to leave, a staff member approached her, holding a small folded paper. "The president asked me to give you this," he said. Emma unfolded it carefully. It was a handwritten note. "Fair questions deserve fair answers. Keep asking them. Don't let anyone tell you who someone is before you've met them." She stared at it for a long time. The lights, the shouting, the headlines all faded away. What remained was something rare in politics, a quiet, undeniable human moment. When Emma Carter walked back into the newsroom that night, the buzz of conversation was deafening. Editors clustered around desks, screens glowed with breaking news alerts, and every journalist seemed to have an opinion about the interview that had just aired. Some praised President Trump's composure, Others dismissed it as strategy. But everyone was waiting for one thing: Emma's story. Her editor, a seasoned man with decades in politics, looked up as she entered. "All right, Carter," he said with a half-smirk. "What's the headline? Trump dodges again? Or maybe Trump charms the crowd? Pick a side, make it strong." But Emma didn't answer right away. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and stared at the blinking cursor. For the first time in her career, she didn't want to write to win. She wanted to write to understand. Her article began with a single line that made her editor frown when he read it. Sometimes, the story isn't about who wins the argument, it's about who's willing to listen. From there, she wrote something unlike anything she'd ever published. She described how President Trump's calm and unexpected answers had revealed something deeper, not just about him, but about the people who stood behind him. She admitted that she had misjudged him, not because she suddenly agreed with him, but because she had stopped seeing him as a person and started seeing him only as a headline. It was raw, honest, human. When the article went live, it exploded across the internet. Within hours, it was trending on every major platform. Some readers called her brave for admitting her bias. Others mocked her for being soft. But Emma didn't care. For once, the noise didn't matter. She had learned something powerful that day: that truth isn't always loud, and understanding doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes real courage is simply the willingness to listen. In her next on-air broadcast, Emma ended with a quote from that unforgettable night. "When we stop judging before listening, we start to see the world a little clearer." That clip reached millions. And as people watched, they weren't just hearing about politics, they were witnessing something far rarer: empathy in action. That night, President Trump's unexpected answer didn't just change one reporter's story. It changed her heart, and reminded an entire nation that in a divided world there is still room for understanding.